She laughed as if it were the most amusing thing imaginable, suggesting I was the butt of a shared joke. 4 stools away, I clearly heard her response to the question about my proposal, despite being posed jokingly in the context of overindulged banter about future plans. To my dismay, she didn't seem fazed by the suggestion and laughed heartily, implying marrying me was an absurd notion. Placing my glass on the bar slowly and deliberately, I listened to the ice inside it clink softly in response to her dismissive laughter. On a chilly Tuesday night in Nashville, I abandoned 2 $20 bills beneath the bar's glass ledge, enough to settle our bill. Without uttering a word to anyone, I exited that establishment. My name is Caleb Merritt. I am 36 years old and work as an ER nurse at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. With this job, I have glimpsed the deep scars life can inflict upon individuals, knowing some injuries may appear minor yet reach the core. I've comforted strangers during their darkest moments, kept composure amid chaos, but on that Broadway sidewalk under the November chill, I felt anything but calm. I was just a man struggling to comprehend how 2 years of my life had been encapsulated in 11 words. I'd rather die than marry him. My phone vibrated an hour later, revealing her name on its screen. I gazed at it for a lengthy spell before responding. "Caleb, where have you been? We've searched everywhere for you." Her tone was comforting and worried, as it often was when she required something from me, the voice that had won my heart, the voice that whispered things to me in the shadows which I fully trusted. "I'm back," I replied. "Simply felt exhausted." She queried my well-being 3 times more. I assured her I was fine each time. We ended our call, and I perched on the brink of my bed in my East Nashville apartment, where we'd spent numerous Sunday mornings at the market, and pondered a statement my father had made when I was 17. He'd said, "Son, when someone reveals their true nature to you, don't dispute it. Don't attempt to justify it. Don't pretend you didn't observe it." Believe her, I did, but believing and knowing what action to take afterwards are 2 distinct entities, and I wasn't prepared for it that particular night. Prior to sharing what transpired next, let me clarify something about my past. I am not a man who succumbs easily. My experience spans over 23 months in an emergency room, a tenure that has permanently erased any predisposition towards fragility. I've worked extended hours during holidays and crises. I've declared time of death for patients I'd fought tirelessly to save. I've delivered devastating news to mothers no mother should ever bear. In such situations, disintegration is not an option. One learns to maintain composure, a skill that eventually transcends the hospital setting. Yet I am not invincible. Let me emphasize that point. My roots lie in Murfreesboro, approximately 30 miles southeast of Nashville. For 4 decades, Gary and Deborah Merritt have maintained their seating arrangement on the same side of their favorite diner booth as if they were newlyweds. My father served at a trucking company for 3 decades, while my mother instructed 2nd graders until her joints failed. We weren't affluent, but were steadfast. I hold loyalty in higher regard than wealth, an observation drawn from personal experience. My career choice as a nurse was spurred by my grandmother, Ruth. During the final 8 months of her life, she navigated hospitals frequently, and I observed how nurses cared for her with patience, dignity, and sincere concern. This is what I aspired to become, someone who alleviates a distressing situation even slightly. I earned my RN at Tennessee State, spent 2 years in pediatrics before moving to the ER, where I required the fast pace and problem-solving aspects. Now in my 6th year at Vanderbilt, I am fortunate to have trustworthy colleagues. My daily life is comfortable now. I live in a compact flat near 5 Points, gradually transforming it into a place that feels like my own, complete with a genuine bookshelf, a good coffee maker, and a back porch where I unwind on weekends, absorbing the neighborhood's morning buzz. For quite some time, I missed having someone to share this sanctuary with. At Daria's wedding 2 years ago, I met Sienna Baxter, an event coordinator who effortlessly engaged everyone she encountered, from caterers and elderly relatives to intoxicated groomsmen. At the outdoor ceremony in Tennessee that almost succumbed to the weather yet ended up enchanting, Sienna stood out with her honey-blonde hair and eyes that seemed to be sharing a secret joke. She made every person feel exceptional, including me. For 3 hours that evening we conversed. We exchanged contact information. By the next weekend we had our inaugural date at a restaurant on 12th Avenue, and by the conclusion of that meal I was in a predicament, knowing I was falling before actually doing so. It has been 2 years since then. We were together for those 2 years. She met my acquaintances. I introduced her to mine. She kept a drawer at my residence. I knew her preferred beverage, the name of her sister's boyfriend, and how she liked her eggs on Sunday mornings. I had pondered popping the question. I confess this fact. I had perused rings. Not purchased one, not made concrete plans, but I had contemplated it, considering it an inevitability. I'd rather die than marry him. Only 11 words, 2 years. A filled drawer with her belongings, a Sunday morning routine, and a future I had silently been shaping in my mind, only to find it abruptly demolished. If you've ever encountered an unwanted truth, you know that the initial sensation isn't fury. Instead, it's a chilling lucidity, similar to stepping out of a cozy room into the biting cold, which sharply brings everything into focus. That was the feeling I experienced as I left the bar. Not rage, not sobs, but clarity. A bitter, practical kind. For 3 days, I remained silent. I went to work. I completed my shifts. I maintained my composure just as I always did, which was solely because the ER doesn't consider personal matters when a code is called. Regardless of whether one's heart is shattered, a code is still a code. For 3 days, Sienna texted me twice daily, and I responded as usual, though I'm not pleased that I could maintain my routine while potentially disintegrating internally without a trace. This might reveal an undesirable aspect of myself. I haven't made up my mind about it yet. During those 3 days, I was deeply engrossed in contemplation, primarily pondering one question. Did I misinterpret what I heard? Regardless of the number of times I reevaluated it, the response remained the same: no. There is no charitable interpretation for "I'd rather die than marry him." As a shrewd man, I tried to find an alternative explanation. I examined tone, context, potential influence of alcohol, the unique way women sometimes joke with their friends for comic effect. However, she laughed genuinely, not out of nervousness or deflection. Her laughter was effortless. It was the sound of someone stating something that seemed genuinely, evidently accurate to them. On the 4th day, I contacted my elder brother Derek Merritt. Derek operates an HVAC business in Murfreesboro and has been married to Lori for 12 years, with 3 children under 10 who create a ruckus, albeit delightfully so. Derek is the individual I reach out to when I need to express something openly and receive confirmation that I'm not delusional. I informed him that Sienna stated she'd prefer death over marriage to me. No preliminaries, a moment of silence, ask for repetition. I repeated it again. I disclosed everything to him. The bar setting, the stools, how her friend had revealed it. I questioned whether she knew I was present. No, another pause. Caleb, I understand. Have we discussed this with her? Not so far. Do you plan to? Pondering my approach. Derek fell silent for a moment, then responded, "You remember what Dad often says. Believe what people demonstrate," I said. He stated she made it clear, and that was the end of it. Before I delve into how this conversation transpired, I urge you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Click the notification bell, post a comment below about an instance when you unintentionally overheard something, and discuss its impact on your life. If this story resonates with you, press like so that others can find it too. These stories are significant. Now, let's return to Caleb. A certain type of quietness dwells in the void between what you comprehend and what remains unsaid. For 9 days, I existed within that silence. 9 days filled with texts, phone calls, and one Friday dinner at her favorite sushi restaurant in Midtown, where I observed her discussing her upcoming event contracts, her friend Priya's new apartment, and a spring trip to Charleston. Across from her, I said all the appropriate responses. And I thought, she is oblivious. She has no inkling whatsoever. Not due to being a skilled deceiver, I'm not that. Instead, it was because she wasn't closely observing or genuinely connecting with me. She conversed at me, as one might talk to a familiar piece of furniture in a room. This understanding was what eased something within me. Not her words nor her laughter, but the perception that she hadn't observed my differences. Inviting her over on a Saturday afternoon, I expected her at 2 o'clock. She arrived bearing coffee from the costly Gallatin Avenue cafe she favored. She perched on my couch as usual, tucking her feet beneath her, and idled through her phone while our coffee grew cold between us. "Sienna," I said, stirring her attention. "I have a question to ask you, and I need your honest answer." She raised her gaze. "All right," she responded, placing her phone on the couch cushion. "About the night at the bar," you inquired when Priya hinted about my proposal plans. The hue of her complexion altered slightly, not drastically, but as if she had discovered an open door that she previously thought was shut. "Caleb, what did you propose?" She hesitated, opening and closing her mouth. "Did I say that?" I asked. Yes, I confirmed. I'd like to hear it again directly from you. Her gaze wandered around the room, avoiding eye contact with me. I was merely joking with my friends, she started, but trailed off. I'm an ER nurse, I interjected. Over 6 years of training have taught me to interpret people under pressure. I know the difference between someone playing up for their peers and someone speaking truthfully. You were truthful. The prolonged quietness that ensued was the longest I've willingly endured, and I'm accustomed to long periods of stillness by bedsides. I know how to keep silent. Eventually, she uttered, "It's not that I don't value you." "That's not what I question," she pursed her lips. "It's intricate, make it simpler." She breathed out slowly. "Caleb, you're outstanding, you truly are. You're compassionate, steadfast, and dependable. Those are qualities people use to describe a good couch," I said. "That's unfair." "You chuckled," I said. "When Priya asked, you laughed, as if the concept of being with me for a lifetime was the most amusing thing in recent memory. I want to comprehend. Was that sincere, or did I misconstrue it?" She remained silent for a considerable while. Then very softly she confirmed, "It was genuine." I nodded. I assumed, I believed, to feel a crushing emotion in that instant. A shatter, a fissure. Unexpected wave of sorrow, akin to when it bursts through a closed door. However, what I experienced was more straightforward, more pristine. It felt like discarding a cumbersome burden I had carried for an extended period. "Thank you," I told her, perplexing her, "for being truthful at last." I rose, moved to my room, and returned with the drawer hers, positioned on the table next to my window. I placed it before her on the coffee table. Inside were her charger, a miniature lotion for travel, an extra apartment key, and a pair of earrings she had been searching for. "I believe this is all," I said. "If I've left anything behind, let me know and I'll bring it over." "Caleb," her voice faltered slightly. "You don't need to do this just yet." "I understand," I replied, "but I wish to." She remained seated, examining her drawer as if seeing it for the first time, scrutinizing the entirety of it. "I didn't intend to harm you," she said. She admitted that she had thought similarly. She paused, then continued. "I assumed things would feel distinct eventually, that I'd arrive. Yet when Priya questioned me, I merely spoke the truth." "I understand," I replied for the third time, "and I am thankful for it. It revealed everything I required to know." 40 minutes later, she departed. She shed a few tears in the doorway. I did not. I gave her the items from the drawer in her tote bag and suggested that she find what she truly desired, meaning my words sincerely, and then I closed the door. In my living room, I stood silently for a few minutes. The apartment carried the scent of her coffee and perfume, scents that would dissipate within a few days but eventually would disappear. I donned my coat and embarked on a walk. Here's the truth about Nashville in November. People don't discuss it as they do during summer, with rooftop bars, honky-tonks, and weekly bachelorette parties spilling onto Broadway. In November, Nashville takes on its own character. Leaves lining Shelby Park descend in waves, tinted gold and brown, reluctant to let go. The air carries a familiar scent of wood smoke from nearby homes, and the early mornings on the greenways offer a tranquil hush that invites reflection. For 2 hours I walked, my mind preoccupied with thoughts of Sienna. Then I shifted my focus away from her, contemplating if I had overlooked signs that, in retrospect, seemed glaringly obvious. Her tendency to subtly alter the subject when discussing the future was something I pondered upon. Not outright evade, but steer gently, as one might divert a tedious conversation. The fact that she'd never once, in 2 years, asked me about our desired lifestyle was also on my mind. She often spoke of her desires, made plans involving me logistically, but never sought my aspirations directly. I found myself reflecting on my parents as well, sharing the same booth for 41 years. My mother inquiring about my father's day with the same heartfelt curiosity as on their initial date. My father recalling minor details she mentioned previously and taking action, demonstrating the quiet, unwavering affection that isn't flashy or boisterous but incredibly steady. I pondered over the fact that I am 36 years old, work 50-hour weeks in an emergency room, and return to a decent apartment in a desirable neighborhood in a city I adore. My life is not subpar. In truth, it's a more than satisfactory existence, and I had been so preoccupied with adding Sienna to it that I failed to recognize she wasn't enhancing it at all. My phone vibrated, a text from Sienna. I replay our conversation in my mind and believe I made a regrettable decision. "Can we discuss this, please?" I read it thrice, composed a response mentally, then returned the device to my pocket and continued walking. There is a distinction between making a mistake and expressing honest feelings. Sienna hadn't erred, she'd spoken truthfully. The error shared between us both was the 2 years we neglected to have that discussion. Truth wasn't the issue. Truth was the catalyst for resolution. I replied after 2 hours, having returned home, prepared pasta, and settled at my kitchen table with the radio playing. You didn't err, Sienna. You spoke truthfully. That's not something you should apologize for. She called straight away. I allowed it to go to voicemail. She called again. The same response. She texted, I already miss you. I think I'm in love with you. I just got frightened. I pondered over that message for a while, then considered the meaning of frightened. What were they afraid of? Afraid of commitment or fearing the wrong person? As these are very distinct emotions. Only one pertains to me. I typed back. I suggest you take some time and determine what you truly desire. I wish you success in finding it. 3 weeks after ending with Sienna, my coworker Daria, whom I'd met at her wedding 2 years ago and where our relationship had started, found me in the Vanderbilt break room late one night during shifts. She noticed a change in me and asked about it. You appear more relaxed, she said. That's unusual because I thought you had parted ways with Sienna. We decided to end things, I clarified. There is a difference. Daria questioned the distinction. What is the difference? I explained the factual account of our breakup. The bar, the stools, the 11 words, and the walk home. Daria pondered for a moment before I filled her in with the same details I'd been sharing for 3 weeks, without adding much commentary. She commented, I've always found appeal in both of you, yet I never truly believed you were compatible. Why didn't you express this earlier? She responded with a shrug. It wasn't my role to voice such opinions. People must discover these things on their own. It seems some people need to hear it from a stranger in a bar first, I remarked, eliciting a laugh from Daria. This was comforting as it indicated that the subject was no longer tender. May I ask you a question? Daria inquired. Of course. Do you regret those 2 years? I contemplated, being honest about most things. No, I replied. I gained insight into what I desire, and that's valuable. What do you seek? I said. Someone who doesn't need to find their way, someone who has already arrived. Daria nodded as if comprehending. Indeed, it took me 2 years and an overheard dialogue to grasp this concept, but it resonated fully. For a brief moment, I'd like to share some insights about my father, as he plays an understated yet crucial role in this narrative. Unlike the stereotypical sentimental man, Gary Merritt doesn't indulge in speeches or family gatherings for meaningful discussions. Instead, his way of expressing love and communicating is through his presence. He attends every significant event and many insignificant ones, and when he's there, his presence is undeniably palpable, a quality some people struggle to achieve. When I disclosed Sienna to him, I drove to Murfreesboro the Sunday after our split, sat at the kitchen table with my mother's coffee and my father's unwavering attention. He was mostly silent. He listened intently. My mother added more to the conversation because she often does, offering words that were compassionate, comforting, and pragmatic, distinctly maternal in their essence. She assured me I deserved someone certain about me. She emphasized that certainty wasn't something you actively pursued in a relationship. He never spoke of it before, but my father shared. When I proposed to your mother, I was filled with terror, not due to doubt about her. I was absolutely certain about that. I was terrified because I was certain, and that meant I had something genuine to lose. My mother glanced at him, as did I. Unlike him, my father doesn't offer preambles, he simply states his words. When one isn't sure, there's no real risk involved, he added. The fear only arises when something truly matters. After a long moment of contemplation, I inquired, did Mom appear afraid? Both my mother and father laughed. My mother wept, according to him, before she agreed. She cried because she had hoped I would ask and was fearful I wouldn't. He fixed his gaze on me. That fear you're experiencing, Caleb, isn't the same as the one you're describing. One type is fear mixed with desire, while the other is fear masking avoidance. Sienna's fear fell into the latter category, and she carried it for 2 years instead of expressing it to you directly, revealing much about your relationship. Around 4 months after parting ways with Sienna, I was on a Saturday shift at the ER when a woman named Nora arrived with her elderly father, who had fractured his wrist at home. Though not a life-threatening injury in comparison to other cases, it was significant enough for them, and the woman was someone who valued information and wasn't shy about asking for it, a trait I admire. Her name, Nora Callahan. A third-grade teacher at an elementary school in Germantown, she possessed her father's keen eyes and the tranquility that emerges from years of managing others' concerns. She asked insightful questions, expressed genuine gratitude, and when I returned to check on her father after he was settled and his wrist was bandaged, She was engrossed in a book from her bag, an unexpected genre for her, a mystery novel, chosen spontaneously due to the prolonged waiting room hours. "That's considerate," I remarked. "It helps him focus when he's anxious," she explained. "He's been alone more often since my mom passed away 2 years ago." Swiftly, she mentioned the passing of her mother, casually as if it were an accepted fact, a part of her peaceful acceptance of life's hardships. "His condition has improved. This was just an accident," he overreached while trying to fetch something from a high shelf. "You mentioned that upper shelves often lead to more emergency room visits than people might think," to which she responded by planning to move as many items as possible to mid-level shelves this week. Later, Tom, her father, fell asleep, leaving her engrossed in her mystery novel with a deep concentration. During my rounds at the end of my shift, she approached me in the hallway and praised my kindness, particularly towards him. I replied that I do it because it matters, to which she seemed to agree. There was a moment of pause, a significant one where action is either taken or not. I then offered, "I don't usually do this, but would you like to grab coffee sometime?" She looked at me thoughtfully, not appearing anxious or putting on a show, just contemplating. And then she agreed, saying yes. I handed her my simple business card with only my name and number, which she accepted. She bid good night. She escorted her father out via the sliding doors into the parking garage, leaving me in the ER hallway at 11:15 on a Saturday night, feeling a sensation I hadn't experienced for some time. Secure, not regarding where it was heading. I was unsure of its destination. However, I felt certain that querying her was the proper course of action, that she was someone deserving of inquiry, that the intuition was valid and not the frantic type that emerges when one is attempting to fill a void, but the subtle kind that arises when something truly aligns. 3 days later, she messaged me, "A coffee shop on Elliston Place, Sunday morning." I responded affirmatively straight away. We conversed for 3 hours. She shared stories of her students and the unique differences between second and third graders. I discussed the difficulties and clarifying aspects of working in the ER. She inquired about my family, and I spoke about my parents, Derek and Murfreesboro, as well as my grandmother, Ruth. She discussed her father, Tom, her deceased mother, Patricia, and her younger sister residing in Portland who contacts every Sunday. She didn't guide or control the conversation. Instead, she spoke, asked questions, and listened intently, a quality of attention that makes someone feel genuinely perceived rather than merely heard. As we were departing, she expressed her desire for a repeat encounter. Not that we should do this again at some point, which could mean anything. "I'd like to do this again, explicitly, clearly." "I feel the same way," I replied. We organized our subsequent meeting on the spot outside the coffee shop. Dinner the following Thursday at a restaurant I was familiar with on 12th Avenue. She agreed without any reservations. I drove home along Cumberland and the morning light shone flat over the water. My thoughts returned to my mother's words, "A person who is convinced about you." I wasn't sure if Nora held such conviction yet. Before its time, yet her presence was palpable, a prerequisite for all else. I knew when she agreed, not just to coffee but dinner as well. It wasn't an act, no pretense, no guise. It was genuine. Her affirmative response was sincere. That alone was significant. Allow me to share something I've come to grasp, not as counsel, for I'm not a purveyor of advice, but as a revelation born from my experiences in emergency medicine and a particular Tuesday night in November at a bar stool beside an unfamiliar woman. Authenticity isn't always easy. At times, it emerges in the most unexpected, unpleasant ways, like in a crowded bar, disguised in laughter that mocks you. Often, the truth one needs to hear is the truth that shatters the construct of the future one has imagined. When that occurs, the initial response is often to contest it, to reword it, to find a perspective that allows you to stay static without having to confront tough choices. However, the convenient rendition of truth seldom proves beneficial. Sienna's words in that bar were the most advantageous she ever spoke to me. Not because they caused pain, though I can't deny they did, but because they liberated me from wasting another year, or perhaps 2 years, or even 5 years, attempting to guide someone towards a destination they had no intention of reaching. That night, I departed the bar. I claimed I was shielding her from a fate worse than death. I stated it with a sharpness that I acknowledge might not have been entirely necessary, yet I harbor no remorse for it, as that's exactly what I was doing. I was safeguarding both of us from the impending disaster of perpetuating a relationship that would never lead to the destination I envisioned. 3 months later, found myself in an emergency room hallway, giving a third-grade teacher from Germantown my card whom I had thanked sincerely. I was asking for coffee, and she agreed, meaning yes genuinely. Life doesn't usually unfold with dramatic twists or sudden fortunes. It's more like a door closing while another opens. One must decide to walk through the new one instead of lingering at the closed one in anticipation of a reopening. Nora isn't necessarily the conclusion of this story, as we are only 6 weeks into it, having shared 5 dinners, a morning stroll at the 8th Avenue Farmers Market, and an afternoon drive down Natchez Trace to show her the autumn colors from the overlook. It's still early, but honest. Straightforwardness is effortless when there's no compulsion involved. Here's my take on the situation. For 6 weeks straight, I never doubted her sincerity. She doesn't hide her intentions, she's direct and clear. When I share about my work, she shows genuine curiosity, asking follow-up questions in our next conversation. Last Tuesday, she called just to share a humorous anecdote from her classroom, not for assistance, but because it amused her. Her actions resonate with me, as they would with my parents. I'm starting to recognize this quality too. If you're still reading, thank you. It suggests that this narrative touches on your experiences or current state. After that November night, a question lingered with me for quite some time, not about why she spoke those words, but rather how to react when the truth is revealed before one is ready for it. The answer, I believe, lies in what I attempted to do. One should remain still for a while, allow the truth to settle, refrain from calling or shouting, and avoid collapsing or denying it. Simply accept its truth. Only then, once prepared, should one respond to reality instead of to the desired outcome. The most difficult part is accepting reality rather than what was hoped for. Yet, it's the only path that doesn't incur more than it rewards. My name is Caleb Merritt, a nurse. On that November night, I walked away from a bar with 11 words etched within me and a crystal-clear vision of my next course of action. Had my grandmother Ruth been here to witness all this, she would have said something like this: "That's the hardest but only right way forward." The sentiment could have been expressed as, "My dear, truth isn't always neatly packaged. Sometimes it arrives abruptly and unintentionally from someone else. Yet it remains the truth, and truth, even when unwelcome, is still a valuable treasure." She was an insightful woman, her wisdom compelling enough to inspire nursing as a career. That night in the bar, Caleb didn't suffer a loss. He gained knowledge. He learned the truth before investing another year pursuing someone who had already made up her mind and lacked the courage to express it directly. The most alarming aspect of this narrative, is not what she eventually said, but rather how long she waited to say it. If you're currently in a relationship where something feels amiss, with you doing most of the effort while receiving polite smiles in return, don't wait for a bar conversation to enlighten you. You've known the situation isn't right for some time now. The question is whether you're prepared to acknowledge it honestly. Caleb was ready. See where it led him.